Hello, my dear children. Very good morning to everyone. Today we are going to learn chapter 13, Active and Passive Voice. You are welcome to today's class. Come, let us start the lesson. Objectives. Define what voices of verb are. What the objectives will do? It will define what voices of verb are. Differentiate active voice and passive voice. Convert an active voice sentence to passive voice sentence. Convert a passive voice sentence to an active voice sentence. These are the things we can do with the object. Now let us see what are voices of verb. Voices of verb in traditional grammar, voices of verb is defined as a quality of verb that indicates whether its subject acts or it is acted upon. It has two types, the active voice and the passive voice. That is what we are going to learn through this video. First, let us read what is an active voice. The active voice is the normal voice. This is the voice that we used most of the time. In the active voice, the object receives the action of the verb. The object will receive the action of the verb. This is what very important. Don't forget. Now, let me explain through an example. Merlin mailed the letter. In this, Merlin is a subject. Mailed is a verb. Object is the letter. Here, the object receives the action. When the object receives the action, that is an active voice. For example, the dog jumped on the boy. Here, the dog is subject. He is doing the jumping. The dog is doing the jumping. So, jumping is a verb. On the boy is an object. Christy will give a book report to the class. Christy is subject, is doing the giving, the verb. To the class is a object. In the sentence, James hit the ball. The verb hit is in the active voice. This is a James hit the ball is an active voice. In other words, the form hit shows the subject James did the action. Here hit, who is doing? James. He is doing the hitting. So, the sentence James hit the ball is an active sentence. In the sentence, the ball was hit by James. The verb was hit is the passive voice. In other words, the form was hit shows that the subject, the ball, was affected by the action. The sentence ball was hit by James is a passive voice. The passive voice always we use by. So, in the passive voice, subject will go as an object, object will go as a subject. Now, let us see the passive voice. The passive voice is less usual. We will not use mostly. In the passive voice, the subject receives the action of the verb. The subject receives the action of the verb. There, in the active voice, object receives. Here, the subject receives the action of the verb. We use the passive voice when we want to make the action object more important. If the object is more important, for that case only we use the passive voice, otherwise we use active voice. Let me explain through an example. The letter was mailed by Merlin. Here subject is the letter, verb is was mailed, object is by Merlin. The boy was jumped on the dog. Boy is a subject, was being jumped on. That is a verb. By the dog is a object. A book report will be given by Christy to the class. Report is a subject, will be given as a verb, by Christy is a object. Here are some more examples. The ball hit Janet. This is active voice. The passive voice. Janet was hit by the ball. Both the sentences are correct. Sometimes we can use by. The passive voice mostly we use by. So you use by. He wrote a letter. The letter was written by him. The letter was written by him. By him also we can use or we cannot use. Active voice. The mailman carried the mail. The mail was carried by the mailman. Now let us see the rules for passive voice for all the tenses. The place of subject and object in sentence are interchanged in passive voice, as I told before. The third form of a verb will be used as the main verb in the passive voice. Third form of a verb means a past participle verb we will use in the passive voice. Tenses which cannot be converted, which we cannot change. Present perfect continuous tense, past perfect continuous tense, future continuous tense, future perfect continuous tense. Simple present tense, how we can change. The rule is first object will be there. Is, am or any auxiliary verb, then third form of a verb, then by, then subject. Now active voice you see, Ram drives the car. The passive voice how we can change. The car is driven by Ram. I like mangoes. Mangoes are liked by me. We used by, the subject goes as a object and object goes as a subject in the present tense. Now you see present continuous tense. Now here first object will be there, then is, am or then we have to add being. Then third form of a verb plus by and a subject. The active voice you see, Ram is driving the car. The car is being. We should add being. Being, then driving. Driven by Ram. Third form of a verb we used in the passive voice. Then she is reading the book. The book is being read by her. Then present perfect tense. First we have to use object, then has or have, plus been we have to use. Then third form of a verb by plus subject. Ram has driven the car. That is the active voice. The car has been. We have to use been. Driven by Ram. They have learnt these lessons. These lessons have been learnt by them. Then the simple past. Simple past means we have to use first object, then was or were, singular was, plural were, third form of a verb, by plus subject. Active voice. Ram drove the car. The car was driven by Ram. I liked mangoes. Mangoes were liked by me. Now past continuous. We have to use first object, was or were, being plus third form of a verb, by plus subject. Ram was driving the car. The car was being driven by Ram. She was reading the book. The book was being read by her. Here past continuous we have to use being. Then past perfect tense. First is object, then had plus been plus third form of a verb plus by plus subject. Now let us see the active voice is Ram had driven the car. The passive voice, the car had been driven by Ram. We used been. They had learnt these lessons. These lessons had been learnt by them. Then simple future. First object will be there, then will be plus third form of verb plus by subject. Ram will drive the car. The car will be driven by Ram. I will like mangoes. Mangoes will be liked by me. Now future perfect tense. Object will have plus been plus third form of verb by plus subject. Ram will have driven the car. The car will have been driven by Ram. They will have learnt these lessons. These lessons will have been learnt by them. Now, the passive voice for imperative sentences. Open the door. It is an order. Let the door be opened. Clean the room. This also order. Let your room be cleaned. Speak the truth. It's the advice. Let the truth be spoken. The passive voice for present and future models. Now can be is that means we can change into passive voice. Could be. May be. Might be. Should be. Must be. Ought to be. May have been. Might have been. Should have been. Must have been. Ought to have been. So you revise once again and learn the definition, then you will understand more. Thank you. Have a nice day.